Hello, welcome to another edition of Old Guy Career Change. This week things are going to be a little bit better again because I have a brand new microphone from Rode. It's a USB mic mounted on my phone, so the audio should be a bit improved. I'm still thinking about what to do about lighting. I'm not sure about that. Today I want to talk about how I got into consulting, how I started a consulting company, and how it's going. Some of the decisions I made along the way speak to how sometimes we can analyze a situation, make a decision, come to a belief about something, and we're very sure of ourselves, but in fact we're dead wrong. And so I hope this is entertaining for you, if nothing else. So I got to go back to April, mid-April. It's about 2.5 months, maybe 2.25 months since I started my full-time job search. So I was continuing to push because that's what I do. If I don't make progress on something, I continue banging ahead, pushing until I get success. That's how my brain works. Because of course, if what you're doing isn't producing results, do it even harder, right? Makes perfect sense. So I decided to talk about this, to consult with my closest friends. These were sort of focused discussions on my job search, right? I need to talk to you. I'm having trouble seeing what I should be doing, not getting the results I wanted. I want to get your perception. And so I talked to 5 of my friends. Their names are Robin, Carrie, Joe, Linda, and Cindy. Very good, very close friends. Let's see, Joe and Linda and Cindy spent a lot of time suggesting, nudging, arguing for me becoming a consultant. And they did it in different ways. Joe talked about just straight out, you ought to be doing consulting. He also was one to push me to lean into any ageism question. Rather than trying to soft shoe around my age, lean into it and go, I've got a lot of experience and expertise. I've worked for a lot of different companies, and I can bring that expertise to bear on your problem. Lean into it. Don't shy away from it. Linda talked a lot about working for or registering with established consulting companies that already have vendor agreements with other firms, and being essentially one consultant in their stable of possible consultants as a way to get my foot in the door. Cindy was, in some ways, the most interesting. Cindy has had a long career in marketing, both for companies and in her own consulting company, which I'll get to in a couple of minutes. And she asked me a series of probing questions. And as she did so, I could see the gears in her head turning as I answered each question. And at the end of it, she said very simply, you ought to be a consultant. Robin and Carrie talked to me about trusting the process, giving myself time to be able to reflect on what it is I wanted to do, what would really make me happiest, and to stop the full-time job search, not primarily to be able to pick up consulting work, but to lower the noise in my head and be able to think clearly without outside stress, interrupting the process, to be able to think clearly about what it is I wanted to do. Now, it was also instructive to consider what I didn't hear. I didn't hear anyone saying, you ought to keep at it, you ought to keep plugging, you'll get there eventually. None of them said that. To a person, they said, forget about full-time searching, forget about a full-time job, become a consultant, and or take time to think about what it is you want to do. Quiet your mind down so you can actually, have some internal discussion about what to do with your life. So all of them were nudging me in the same direction. And Cindy in particular gave me a series of steps, exactly what to do, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, on how to get my consultancy established. Nothing that she said, couldn't have been found out by me on the web by some searching, but, she had it locked down. Do this, do that, do that, do that. And I was writing it down, and boom, I did it. And sure enough, it all worked out in exactly that order. So why is it that I didn't turn to consulting earlier, like a couple of months ago, like maybe a couple of years ago? Well, it was because I had outdated, outmoded, frankly ignorant impressions of what being a consultant is like. And it's funny, sometimes in my life I have thought about a thing and I'm very sure I have it all figured out and I'm very sure I've considered every angle, but in fact, I'm wrong. And so these are the views that I had. They're based on experiences in a segment of the computer industry that no longer exists from years ago. So they're not true. I had thought they were true, but I was wrong. If you think any of these things that you see on the screen here, don't believe it. And so I decided to go for it. So I've got my consulting company, and I'll tell you about it in a second. I have actually decided to invert the prioritization. I now consider the consulting company first priority and the full-time job search. If it happens, it happens. If lightning strikes, that's great. If I get a company interested in me and it looks like it's a really sweet, interesting situation, I will enthusiastically interview for it. Now, if you look on the web for information about forming an LLC, every state is different, of course, but at least in Washington state, it's pretty straightforward and it's all done online. And going to the IRS and getting an EIN number is straightforward. The mechanics of it are really easy. As far as your taxes and such, for the IRS, interestingly enough, LLCs don't really exist for income taxes. Everything that happens with the LLC is just mashed over into your personal taxes. But where there can be a difference is in state and local taxes. So I have two bits of advice to impart. The first is talk to a tax advisor. You want to be sure that you don't run afoul of any laws regarding state and local taxes. The conversation will be about 45 minutes. It'll be well worth it. The second thing is to talk to an attorney and have a stock contract drawn up for your consultancy. There are two reasons for this. When you deal with a large client, they will have their own contract that they will insist all consultants use. However, you can ask for changes in it. And by comparing their contract to yours, it will help inform what changes you want to ask for. Secondly, when you do business with a smaller client, say a very small startup, you'll be able to immediately do business. Here's my contract, take a look at this, let's talk, let's sign, let's start doing business. And you want your contract to be as short as possible, have straightforward language, protect your interests, of course, but also be fair to both sides. If your contract isn't fair to both sides, it makes the other party feel a little uncertain about whether they can trust you, and it starts the relationship off on a bad foot. So, for example, if you have a non-disparagement or non-defamation clause in your contract, have it for both sides. Right? If you have a early termination clause in your contract, have it for both sides. There's no reason why not. So, naming your company. A lot's been written on this. This is my journey. I quickly zeroed in on wanting a two-word name. The first word would be an adjective or an adverb, and the second word would be a noun or a verb. And so I was thinking about names like deliberate development or effective development or, enhanced Python or something along those lines. And so one problem I ran into is that the word development in company names and in URLs is already very, very popular. Development is used for real estate and organizational and personal development companies. And so that didn't really work out. And I wasn't really happy with some of the adjectives and adverbs that I was coming up with. There was a combination of either names that sounded a little too weird or didn't convey what I wanted to convey, or maybe they were, pretty decent, but the URLs weren't available, or they were available, but not in the top level domains that I wanted to use. And so then I had kind of a stroke of something. Cindy has a company named 47 North Marketing. What's the meaning behind 47 North? Well, Seattle is at roughly 47 degrees north latitude. And so I noodled around on that, and I wanted to have it be a little bit different and also convey maybe, a little bit more accuracy in the name. And so thought of 47.6 North Python, because my house is at roughly 47.6 degrees north latitude. And lo and behold, 476northpython.com was available. And so boom, that's how 47.6 North Python was the name I chose. I like the fact that it has Python in the name because that's what I like to work in, and so that conveys it immediately. And the 47.6 North, I've already had a couple of close friends mention this. It kind of makes you think a little bit. It's like, what does that mean exactly? 47.6 North? Is that body temperature? What is that? We'll see how well I do over the next year with it. And so I went to WordPress.com. I signed up for one of their non-free accounts. I forget which level. They've got a few different levels there. And I used one of their themes. It wasn't one of their freebie themes. It was one of their, non-freebie themes. And I made a simple one-page website at 476northpython.com. And even though, of course, WordPress is a blogging site, you don't have to make a blog with WordPress. And indeed, this is not a blog. It's a simple one-page site. It has links to, you see at the bottom for more information. It has an email address that you can send for more information, and it puts out just in very, very simple terms what I do. And that's it, right? Getting this website out took me just an hour or two, and a lot of that was just futzing with, precise wordsmithing and white spacing and making sure everything looked just right. And this is all I need. And if you do consulting work, this will be all you need. You want something that says who you are. You want it in very simple terms. There's no need for a lot of eye candy because, you're just putting yourself out there. It says what because of course a company is just me now, but who knows? Could I have employees in the future? I guess anything's possible, but I want this to be about the company. So the experience that we have, what we do, and if you want to start a conversation about a project, you email this email address. So how am I doing with my consulting company? Well, about 3 weeks ago, I signed my first contract. It was for a somewhat reduced amount because it's a small startup company that's just getting off the ground with seed funding. They're doing work in AI, and the work is kind of interesting, and I had nothing else going on, so I said, why not? I'll be able to get used to the whole, the mechanism, the logistics around, making out invoices and, tracking my hours and that sort of thing. By the way, a little tip, macOS Pages has a invoicing template, and I will bet $10 that Microsoft Word also has an invoicing template. So there you go. I am in negotiation with a second company for a second contract. This would be for a higher amount, more in line with what I think is the norm for the kind of consulting that I'm doing. It's doing work in a content management system. So this feels really good. All I did is I emailed 4 or 5 friends and coworkers, and I said, hey, if you're looking for someone to do some short to medium term work, I'm available. And here I am. I don't know what the future holds, but this is the way I feel about this after doing it for just 3 weeks. I'm finding that I see the relationship between me and my employer in much simpler terms. It simplifies a lot of things. Compared to the normal set of considerations you have when you interview for a full-time job, I don't care who the founders are. I don't care what they do. I don't care what their values are. I don't care about the company mission statement. I don't care about what the benefits are or how much PTO time there is or anything like that. I don't care about my title because I don't have one. I don't care about how reviews or promotions are handled. I don't care how many staff engineers there are versus senior engineers. I don't care about any of that, right? All I care about is getting work done. This feels really good. It feels healthier, actually. The astute viewer will note that I'm conflating 2 things. There's reducing the amount of stress and irritation from the full-time search, freeing up my mind, slowing things down, letting me be able to let my mind wander, essentially, and think about what it is that I want to do. There's also forming a consulting company and doing consulting. So you might say, well, wait a second, if you're doing consulting work, then you're not letting your mind wander and think about things. The missing ingredient, though, is that the consulting work that I'm doing amounts to 10 hours a week, at least so far. and it's a much simpler employment situation, much lower stress than a full-time search where I'm, fielding rejections every day. And in fact, having some money coming in, having an outlet for my programming instincts and desires actually reduces a little bit of stress, right? Because it's like, okay, I'm not stuck doing nothing. I actually have something that, has a lot of upward potential. And so that's actually very cool. If I were consulting 40 hours or more a week in a very high stress, critical, unpredictable situation, then sure, I wouldn't be able to relax and think about stuff. But in fact, I'm able to relax as well as get the consulting company off the ground, and who knows where that's going to go. So that's pretty cool. And I'm not sure about this. I'm going to go a little bit out on a limb here, but in the balance of power, if you will, between employer and employee, or employer and contractor, the person getting paid, I feel like the balance of power is a little bit more in my favor being a consultant, because things are simple, things are straightforward. Here's what I care about. I care about what the work is and whether it's interesting and whether I want to do it and whether I can do it. I care about who my hiring manager is, who is on the other side of the contract, the individual and the team, and I have to want to work with them and feel I can communicate with them very well. Let's see, I have to like what the contract terms are, right? The payment terms and all that, and I have to like what the rate is, and that's just about all there is, and it's really simple and it feels really good. So I think I'm going to like this a lot. Thank you for watching. And now I'm supposed to say, please click the subscribe button and ask me any questions in the comments. Be sure to do that. Thank you. Take care.